my professional experience was rough until I started to figure some stuff out. So you're gonna definitely help with that learning curve. Just to quickly introduce myself before I dive into some things, my name is Fred Johnson. In my official capacity, I'm the Senior Director of CA Next at Collegiate Academies, which is a charter network here in New Orleans. We have 5 high schools and a few post-secondary programs, and pretty much what our organization does is we help support graduates from those high schools after they graduate. So regardless of what pathway they're on, they have continued support. On the side, in my spare time, I like to, what I do is I have my own consulting firm, fourth education firm, which is focused on working with families and colleges on college access and post-secondary access. And I also have an organization that I founded called Grind to Grad, which is dedicated to really empowering and uplifting Black college students to persist and graduate from college. So with that, I'm going to time myself because if I don't, I'll probably talk to y'all this entire hour entire 40 minutes that we have. So in a second, Perry, if you could go ahead and drop that link in the chat.
Absolutely.
I'm a teacher by trade. In the past, I taught when I first graduated from college. And so a lot of the ways that I like to present is really by teaching. So I'm going to incorporate a little of my story today, but a lot of it is I actually want you to leave with something. And so a few things, as Perry drops that link in the chat, if you have a Gmail, go ahead and make a copy of that so you can edit and type in. If not, feel free to grab a notebook, type in a note to your phone, but I want you to kind of jot things down that resonate with you. I will say I am going to move relatively quickly because I want to be respectful of the time we have, and I want to make sure Kenneth has his full 10 minutes. And then the last thing is just be ready to commit today, right? There's going to be a lot of things that I'm asking you to do or pushing you to do. If nothing else, make sure you commit to something. So as y'all are making copies of that, there were 2 quotes when I thought about the title of this webinar that really stuck out to me that I wanted to share with you. The first is from Booker T. Washington, which reads, "I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by obstacles which he has had to overcome while trying to succeed." So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. And then I'm a spiritual person, and this is one of my favorite Bible quotes or Bible verses, Hebrews 12:11. "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." So I want you to kind of keep those 2 quotes in the back of your mind, and we'll kind of come back to that at the end. So like I said, I'm gonna move through things quickly, but again, you'll have a copy of that Google Doc, and you'll be able to jot things down. So really the first thing I want you to kind of think of and ponder on is I want you to think of anything that you've had success with that didn't come naturally to you. Were you always successful with it? Were you always great at it? Were you always good at it? All right, and the answer to that question is probably not, right? You probably weren't always the best. It probably wasn't always something that you were great at. And like Perry spoke to, you had to work at it, right? You had to get good at it and practice it. And so I really want to kind of break down this term discipline and success, because I think those can be intimidating terms, but I want to help to kind of break down and remove some anxiety about when we talk about those 2 things. I kind of want to give you a quick example of what that was for me. So I'm a member of a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And I'm not going to say I don't have rhythm, but let's just say I'm one of those people that likes to dance, but can't really dance. And so when I joined the fraternity, if you know anything about fraternities, stepping and strolling is a part of that culture. It's a type of dance. And when I first joined, I was horrible at it. I was not good at it at all. And through some hard work and practice, I like to kind of think that I'm a pretty good stepper, but there were 2 specific moments that really spurred in me why I wanted to become a great stepper. One was I was trying out for our chapter step team and I didn't make it. And I don't know if y'all saw the Michael Jordan documentary, but I took that personally. All right. And so I really dedicated myself to really practicing my steps, putting in the time and the effort and the deliberate practice that it takes. And I got better. And then there was another moment that probably hurt more than the first. But I remember my wife, then girlfriend, came and saw a performance that I was in. And she told me that, you know what, I felt like you didn't give your all. I felt like you left some stuff out there. And so from that point forward, I made sure I always gave 100% in every performance. And so it's like, what does that have to do with discipline and success? Well, I wanted to come back to those two terms again. What does success really mean? And what do we really mean when we talk about discipline? So before I talk about what success is, let's talk about what success is not. And success is not what the world says it is. It isn't money. It isn't the title you have, right? It isn't clout. It isn't any of those things. All right. Really, what success is, it's your journey or path that you're going to embark on toward completion of a goal. It isn't even necessarily the goal itself, but it's that journey that you're going to embark on in terms of trying to complete that goal. And so you want to kind of think of this as there's a mountain, right? And you climb the mountain and you get up, you fall. You climb up a little bit further and you fall again. You climb up a little bit further and you fall again. And then when you reach the top, right, you get past the clouds, you see that, oh shoot, there's a whole nother mountain waiting for me. All right. But when it comes to success, it's about embracing the challenge of that next mountain. And really, when it comes to defining success, you define what success is. You don't want to let others define your success because you're limiting your own potential and your own growth. So you have to define what success means for you. So on that worksheet, what I want you to do is take 30 seconds. What is success to you? And I want you to challenge yourself to align less with what the world and what others define success as. And I want you to focus on the journey or the path that will lead to your success. I want to give you 30 seconds to do that.
And if anybody wants to put something in the chat, that would be great too, if you want to share.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right, y'all, like I said, I'm gonna keep things moving pretty quick, but you have the worksheet to kind of come back to. So now we talked about success, we broke that down. Let's talk about discipline. What does that really mean? And again, what is discipline not? So I think sometimes when we think of discipline, for me, I think of this a person in the military, right? I also think of people that are really mentally tough, right? They're not easily swayed, they're never tempted, and it's very automatic. And that's not true. That's not discipline, y'all. Discipline is a skill, it's a muscle that you can flex and make stronger. Everybody can become disciplined. And there's also going to be some areas where you're really extremely disciplined. There's going to be other areas where you lack a ton of discipline. So, for example, for me, I'm very disciplined with being an early riser. I like to wake up pretty early in the morning. I wasn't always like that, but now I pretty much routinely wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, like clockwork. Sometimes without the alarm even going off. Now, where I lack a ton of discipline is anytime there's sweets in the house. If it's here, I'm going to eat it. If there's candy in here, I'm going to eat it. So with that, I'm not very disciplined. I might be able to hold off for a day or two, but at some point I'm be like, forget it. I'll try to work it off later. But it's also important to understand that discipline will exist and not exist in different parts of your life. All right. And the only real way to develop discipline is with practice. Discipline is really a habit. It's not something that you should just expect yourself to do tomorrow. You're going to practice at it. You're going to get a little bit better at it over time. And then eventually it'll become automatic. So the next thing I want you to think about is what's one area of your life where you're really disciplined? And then what's another area of your life where you lack a ton of discipline, but you want to be more disciplined? So I'll give you 30 seconds. Again, you can either type it in the chat, you can go ahead and type it in a document, type it in the notes of your phone, but I want you to have that documented somewhere as that extra layer of accountability. Give you 30 seconds to do that. All right, cool. We're going to keep it moving, y'all. Thank you for bearing with me. So lastly, I kind of want to break down, all right, we talked about success and what that means. We talked about discipline and what that means and kind of looks like. And so, okay, what do I do with this? How do I act on these things? How do I become more disciplined in a way that will lead to my success? So I wanted to break it down into really four main areas, and I call it the IDEA method, IDEA. the idea method. So the first thing you got to do is you have to be invested. You have to be invested. If your goal doesn't matter to you, if the thing you're trying to achieve doesn't really matter to you, you're not really going to do it. And so not only do you need to be invested in the goal, but you need to be invested in what that journey looks like. Okay. So what I want you to do is create a goal. And you might already have a goal, but more importantly than just having a goal, I want you to write down, why does that matter to you and why must you achieve it? Right? Not have to achieve it, but why must you achieve that goal? Give you 15 seconds to jot something down. Why does that goal matter to you and why must you achieve that goal? Cool. So once you're invested, right, step one, the next thing is you gotta embrace. All right, I'm sorry, you gotta make a decision. You gotta make a decision. Decide what is required to achieve that goal. And are you willing to do those things? It's okay. Like for me, I'll give you a prime example. Fitness, I really want to get in better shape, but it's honestly not something that matters to me as much as the success of my professional life or my business. Right? I dedicate a lot more time and energy to those things because they matter more, and I'm a lot more willing to endure the challenges of those things and achieving those goals because I care a lot more about them. So for you, you have to make a decision about what's required, what do you have to sacrifice, and are you willing to make those sacrifices? And it's okay to admit, you know what, it's just not worth it, right? It'll alleviate a lot more pressure from you. So the next thing I want you to do is write what's required to achieve the goal, what do you have to sacrifice, and be real with yourself. Is it worth it? And it's okay to say, you know what, in the grand scheme of where I am in life, this is not worth it. Next, you have to embrace failure, and there has to be deliberate reflection and action. So you have to embrace those challenges. Once you commit, you have to embrace those challenges. So a lot of people, before they even attempt a goal, they're lost because that was my timer, y'all. So I'm gonna make sure I speed through this last part. Before you decide on the goal, some people take themselves out of it by thinking that I'm just not good enough. It's not a matter of you being good enough or not good enough, or having the skill or not having the skill. You have to lean into your ability to get better at something. And everybody can get better at something because you'll try it, you'll fail, and you'll do better at it. And you repeat that process until you rack up your 10,000 hours, and then you're considered an expert, right? And so the question I want you to consider now is what will failure along the journey look like and feel like? And then how are you going to leverage those moments to fail forward? Some of you may have heard that term before, fail forward, right? It's a failure, but it helps you to push forward and actually moves you closer to your goal. And then the last thing is action and accountability. And a lot of people just have problems getting started, right? You get paralysis, you put too much time into the planning and setting up all these structures, and you never actually get started, right? Just start. It doesn't matter. You might not know what you're doing, but just get started. So that's the action piece. Decide to start. Ideally, you start today, and then you need accountability. What motivates you to actually do things, especially if there are things you don't want to do? So for me, it's actually accountability with another person. So right now, because fitness is something I'm struggling with, I have an accountability partner. I have a frat brother who wakes up at 4 a.m. every morning, and I try to get up with him. I did today with him and work out, but we'll be virtually working out. We'll text each other, and that makes me want to do it because I will feel guilty if I see him working out or know that he's getting his workout in and I'm not. I'm being lazy, catching some Z's. So whatever is motivating and will help to hold you more accountable, set up that structure for yourself. So the last question for us to wrap up is, how can you start today, not tomorrow? What step can you take today? And then how can you help to hold yourself accountable throughout this journey? Is it a tracker? Is it social media? Putting it out there for everybody to know, which a lot of people do on social media, but they don't show you the failure necessarily, or just communicating with another person and then checking in after a certain period of time. So that's my time. I'll pass things over to Kenneth, and I'm sure y'all have some questions, which we'll get to in a second.
I have a bunch of questions. I got lots of notes, so thank you, Fred, for sharing that with us. And I don't know if you saw my note, but kettle fried chips is my nemesis. I can't zaps. If there's a bag of zaps, they're going down. I'm sorry, you know. So Kenneth, why don't you also jump in and tell us about yourself?
Yes. First of all, I should have went first. I don't know how I'm going to follow up from Fred. We made a mistake there. Right? My name is Kenneth Morgan. I am a consultant. I recently started my own consulting firm, KM Consulting, where I really support nonprofits and organizations to really organize themselves and do strategy, right? So really picking a goal and how do we accomplish that goal? What are the steps that we have to do to get there? And how do we check things off our list? And so that's really, really important to me because that's how I live my own life. So you'll hear a lot of me really building off of what Fred has already said. But I want to back up a little bit and talk about that 10,000 hour theory, right? So Malcolm Gladwell created this in 2008, and everyone has heard it. It has been a thing that has echoed throughout culture for so long. But there's been so many people who've tried to debunk it and said that it was wrong and that he quoted it different than what it was. The original study was done on violinists, and it basically proved that these violinists had played 10,000 hours and then they were considered experts. Some people said they still were not that good. Some people said they were great. But what he was trying to really say is that if we invest he used 10,000 hours, which is 10 years if you count 4 hours a day. If you invest and dedicate time practicing and perfecting, those are two very important things, practicing and perfecting something, then you could actually achieve it, right? And why those two are very important is because as you practice it, you continue to do it. But when you perfect it, you raise your bar, right? You continue to go higher and higher and higher and continue to challenge yourself. Because as Perry said earlier, if something becomes easy to you, you got it. You have to raise your bar, raise your levels. There are levels to this, as Fred just said. You have to raise your levels so that you are continuing to push forward. One example that I always use and that everyone always uses is Milton Hershey and how he created chocolate, right? Hershey's chocolate. He failed hundreds of times. And I am convinced that Milton Hershey had chocolate that was edible. He had chocolate that was good to somebody, but it still wasn't perfect to him. It wasn't to his level of excellence that he needed, right? And so he continued to go over and over. And as Fred said earlier, you fail forward. He continued to push himself forward. And every time he failed, he realized there's 100 ways not to make this chocolate. There's all these ways that I did not work. I know now not to use this ingredient. We don't need this much salt. We don't need that much baking soda. He learned what not to include in his ingredients to finally, he had something that was at his level of excellence. Something 120 years later, we're still eating, right? That this man created because he dedicated his time to having something that he raised his level and raised his bar. But there's two major steps that I use in my life to create my goals and my plans. First is you have to pick a goal. You have to find something to chase, something, whatever it may be, you have to find it to chase. And it's always great to have both short-term and long-term goals. Those short-term goals are the goals the mile markers. As Fred mentioned earlier, climbing up the mountain, it's just mile markers. I made it mile 1, mile 2, mile 3. I'm at the top of the mountain, but there's another one in the background. I just got to keep going with that one. So having short-term goals leading up to your ultimate goal is important. You have to have that to chase. You also have to know who you are, know yourself, right? I always tell people that sometimes I can be a little bit of procrastinator, or as I tell people, I'm good under pressure. I'm better under pressure. I'm not a procrastinator. But I know that about myself. And so I have to create systems and rules and accountability for myself to still reach my goal. As a consultant now, my time is my money. right? I get paid by the hour. Time is everything to me. That's how I pay my bills. That's how I pay my car note. Everything is my time. I'm also in school, so I'm in graduate school. I also have a family. And so having to spend time and deal with all of these things, I have all these competing priorities. But I know, because I'm a procrastinator, if I procrastinate and don't get my work done, if I don't rack up these hours, these billable hours, the project gets delayed. At the end of the month, I don't get paid. And so there's all these things that fall, cause and effect, as Perry talked about earlier. If I don't know that I'm a procrastinator and set up a plan, set up opportunities for me to succeed so that I am able to continue to spend time with my family, continue to go to school, but continue to meet my levels and continue to raise my bar and get things done, then it all falls apart. Everything falls apart. I can't pay my bills. I'm messed up. I have to be dedicated to this. I started this business a few months ago and have just been dedicated. You have to be committed to your goal. It is super important to be committed to it and follow through and fight for what you want. One of the last things I'll say is when I was in school, when I was in college, how I started my career is that I was a sophomore. And I was like, I'm in college, I'm a sophomore. I was at Dillard. I didn't want to stay in the dorms. I didn't want to stay with my mom anymore. I was like, I want to be my own person, but I know who I am. I know that if I don't have somebody over me, if I don't create the space for me, I'm going to procrastinate. I'm not going to make it to my career. I'm not going to graduate. I was doing work study to help pay for school and help with my scholarships. I had 2 minors, art and literature, and a major in political science. So I had a full course load, work study. I was at school from 8:30 to 6:30 every single day. But I wanted to move out and I have no money. So I started to work at a hotel at night from 11 p.m. to 7 in the morning. I was able to do that because most times at hotels working at a front desk at night, there's very little interaction. So I was able to study. I was able to do my work. I was able to put a plan together. That's where I was able to get tips about my resume and start building up my resume. I applied for so many jobs between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. almost every morning. And like every interview I went on, they were like, what were you doing woke that time of night? I was like, look, the grind does not stop, right? Like that is where I hustled, I got it done. My first job graduating, I was assistant to the mayor of the city of New Orleans. And I applied for that job at 3:30 a.m. one morning, the last day of it. I had been watching that job. I had been working on my resume. I had been building my cover letter. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then I got the interview, practice, sat there in front of this computer in the middle of the night, and I practiced what I would talk about, looked up different things, went on the interview, killed it, got the job, and my career started from there. But my work did not stop, right? Like once I got that job at City Hall, I had reached one level. There's levels to this. I had to go up another level because once I got my foot in the door, now I have to go and impress them. I worked hard to get there. Now I got to impress these people. And so once I impressed them within the first year, I got a promotion and I was doing something else. New level, got to raise it up a little bit higher. Raise it up higher, became a chief of staff managing economic development for the entire city. After graduating, I was 2-3 years from graduating. Now I am running economic development for the city, but did that for 5 months when I was called back to the mayor's office to manage the entire mayor's office, literally direct the mayor's office. And I was like, new level, new bar. You keep raising your bar. When you raise your bar and you fight and you work for it, success and rewards will follow you. It wasn't about the money for me because working in city government, you don't get paid much. I think my first salary, I was making $26,000 a year, wasn't nothing, but it was about the experience that I was getting. It was about the opportunities that I had and the journey I was taking. Because using that journey, using those resources, I was able to, and I left the mayor's office in 2018 when we transitioned out. It is 2020 and I'm now my own business owner, 21, and I'm now my own business owner. But I use those resources. I use that map and the journey and struggles that I had to take to get to where I am today. Pushing, having a dream, and having something to commit to was what got me through. Fred said everything else, so I think I'm good there.
Yeah, this is great. You guys both did exactly what I envisioned would happen during this discussion, which is to talk passionately, about your foundation and, what you bring to the table and how you've guided your life. And, I think when we were talking about doing the session, one of the examples I kind of said to you guys was like, I've used every job as my laboratory to push myself. Like, can I be a good leader? Can I get this done? Can I, all right, I messed that up. I messed up a relationship, right? Somebody misread something I was saying, so I had a fallback. You get to be a leader, you know, stuff's going to be coming at you all sorts of ways. So as you talk about fail forward, it's not just that you missed a deadline. There are people failures and leadership failures and all of that stuff, right? And so I think I love the analogy you guys are talking about the levels, because I always think about like, hey, when I was growing up, you were the best person on your block, then the best person in your neighborhood, maybe then the best person at your school, and then you went to high school. And every time you moved up, there was a whole nother level of game. And if you just look at the, basketball or any sports, athletes now are doing so much work training their bodies and their minds and stuff that when you start to look at, um, just look at Williams for the Pelicans. I mean, that dude's huge and he could jump like crazy. He could probably jump over my head, right? That's not supposed to happen, but that comes from the work, right? And you start to dig into their past, you see. People hate Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady was drafted like, I don't know, 700 or something, So yeah, he still has a beautiful wife, several rings, but still has the same chip on his shoulder. And as, Fred talked about of not making a team, right? That chip is still there. And so I think, we have to take those things. Michael Jordan, if you saw the stories about the Bulls, he used to create animus between players and things like that, or with the media, to push himself. Like, oh yeah, you think what? I'm going to prove you. And that was his level of really pushing himself and being disciplined about it and having something to motivate you. So all of the things that, Fred's asked you to think about and lay out in your plan, find your button, find your push, find your thing, but just know it's all laden with, setbacks. And if you're not good with setbacks, then you're missing the big, juicy opportunity to find out where the next level is, because there's a ton. I mean, professionally, I can, look back at times when I was sitting in my car driving home in traffic, bawling because something didn't go well with the promotion or something nature. I remember those and things like that. So it's all about it. And I think that's what we wanted to talk about, is, the discipline of it. And as Fred tried to lay out, not necessarily just this strict, relationship to discipline, but it is a method of challenging yourself and knowing how you're wired and go through that. So, you guys laid out a number of different things. I mean, I love the journey piece. I love the fail forward. Is there any other sort of, thoughts, Fred, do you want to reinforce?
The biggest thing, patience with yourself. We put undue pressure on ourselves to achieve quickly. It's not about the speed, it's about the sustaining success. And I think I not most often see it, but I think I see this a lot with young men and women who want to pursue professional sports. Making it to the league is setting the bar too low for yourself. You need to be thinking about how to dominate the league, have a 10 plus year career. And that's the same for any industry that you're going into. Like, it's not about making it, it's about getting to the top and staying there. When you think about the inputs for both of those, they're going to look much different. And there really is no finish line. I think a lot of times we want, as humans, we want finality. We want things to come to a conclusion. And that's not how this works. Now, that doesn't mean, like Kenneth talked about, there's milestones. Of course, you celebrate along the way, but you have to know that there's always going to be something else. There's always going to be a new level. But just be patient with yourself, with how quickly you get there or what it looks like to get there. Because once you're there, you want to stay there. So embrace the messiness of discipline and success.
Yeah, so there's a chat. If anybody has any particular questions that they wanted to throw out and ask the panel, please use the chat to do that. I think that there's just so much to sort of unpack here. There is for me, this whole notion, we used a lot of sports analogies, but if I'm gonna just keep on that for one thing, look at the players, particularly in basketball and in football and things like that, that yes, it's good to be great, but if you really want to be, successful, either as an entrepreneur or as a business leader, now you have to transition your mindset to making other people around you great. And how do you push yourself to be a better leader? And there's a whole nother level of, finding that, um, way to inspire other people to act, right? Because, I will tell you, I am pretty clear about how I'm wired. And so I'm very comfortable having people around me who are not wired the same way, right? Because it could be a bunch of people just going off the deep end because, it's just like I'm plowing and plowing. I need people to be around me to say, hey, slow up a second. Have we thought about this, right? Because I am such a driver of trying to move things along. And so there is a point in time, even in your life and yourself, to have mentors and people around you to help you. But then also, as you get to that next level, there's always going to be people around you helping you with that. So this is not I'm going to do it all by myself. And I'll challenge you to think of what you've done in your life on your own. Yes, you had to rely on yourself. Yes, there's the inner self that's pushing. You should not be relying on someone to make you feel good to, achieve your goals. That should all come from within, really deep within. And that's kind of, I know some of the questions we're asking, the schedule Kenneth was working, that came from within. And you can tell you there wasn't any money in it. I mean, the first job, right? You're working through. So that's an internal thing. If I talk about my laboratory, it was me pushing myself to know I was good and then get other people to say, oh, you're good, reach out to me and pick me. Right. So there's a whole nother level of things that, we can talk about your personal brand. I know we talked about before, but here for your success, as we've already mentioned, the levels are going to go up and things like that. So let's see, do you have any strategies for coping with failure? Either one of you guys want to take that on? Strategies for coping with failures.
I'll say this. I failed a lot, right? Like that was one of my biggest fears. Like I hate failure, and I was really hard on myself, and I would really beat myself up. But as you said earlier, it became a mindset for me. I had to learn and grow from my failures. And so I'm a very religious person. And in church, they always tell us, don't stand by the well of sorrow too long. You got to get up. And so I would sit there and be like, yo, I completely failed. Like, what can I take away from this? What can I learn from this? What can I grow from this? Then get up and I got to move on. Because if I stay here too long, I'm going to miss my timeline and I'm going to miss out on something else. So it was really a mindset that I had to deal with to understand failure comes with growth, right? If anything does not fail, it don't grow. It has to, even with plants, when plants grow, leaves fall off of it, right? Like certain things fall, it fails. It's not as beautiful all the time. Failure happens, it's a part of life, but we have to learn to really grow from our failures into a bigger thing. And so that's really what I do. I learn from it. It is my only strategy is not to stay sad too long, but to get up and keep pushing from that.
Yeah, to add to what Kenneth said real quick, I want to just drop that Bible verse in again, and a few things. One, your relationship with failure has to change. It will feel painful, but like Kenneth spoke to, it is required for your success. There's no person who has ever become successful without failure. So in terms of your relationship with it, acknowledge like, yeah, this sucks. I don't like feeling like this. But you know what feels even better? When you try it the next time and are either more successful or get to a point where now you're on autopilot, right? That feeling actually becomes more addictive and becomes more of that than the failure is. And you just start to kind of, you almost get numb to failure. It's not even called failure anymore. It's just the process, right? Whether that be feedback, whether that be tweaks. Also know that failure exists within a spectrum, right? There are going to be some moments where you fall flat on your face. There are going to be other moments where it's like, tweak this, tweak that. And there's everything in between. But like Kenneth spoke to, you just have to kind of embrace that is going to be the process, and honestly just keep doing it. You have to keep trying it. And so in terms of coping with it, once you really come to terms with, I know I'm going to feel bad when this happens, but also the feeling of success or growth is actually more of a driving factor and more of a motivating factor and feeling for me, then you'll start to even disassociate the stigma of failure. It'll just be what your process is, and you'll actually seek that out more and more. You'll want to experience that because you know it's getting you to the next level. And that will separate you from a lot of people. Actually, you won't shy away from moments that will require a lot of conflict or failure. Other people try to only put themselves in a light where they can succeed. You'll actually embrace the moments where there'll be a lot of challenge because you will grow faster, and it'll be more sustained growth than somebody who only goes into situations where they're confident.
Yeah, and the piece that I'll add is that so I'm naturally wired to go and deal with that conflict. I know that there are people who are wired to avoid that conflict no matter what, right? And if that's you, what I would say to you is know that, understand that, and I think you could use some of the examples of those things that we talked about here. Um, there's a book that I will find the title of it. It's a really hard read, but it's a book that's sort of based in some Greek mythology that I've used before in another setting, leadership development, that says you have to understand the dark to appreciate the light, right? I'm a business owner just like Fred and Kenneth, and there is fear there, there's anxiety there, there's all those things, and you again have to recognize them and know how to respond to them. And so I'd say I'm again the person who likes to go and deal with that in my business or in my relationships, so that it helps me to manage being in the positive space. Because if I have something negative around me or something that's gnawing at me, and if I don't deal with it, it's just going to catch me off guard when I'm trying to be in a positive space and I want to be focused on something that's going to drive me forward. So I feel like I need to go deal with those things to put it there. And then I would say to you that, positive and negative experience, and I'll close with this: reflection and taking the time to take in things around you, whether they're positive or negative, is good, right? And so that, I always I like to use the example of the Matrix, where they're like, did you see two white rabbits or one white rabbit, right? And so you want to be aware and present so that you can rely on your experience, you can rely on failures and successes to help you with, making good decisions. We'll talk later about emotional intelligence, right? Those are about using experience and failures and successes to be present and know how to handle yourself in situations where people don't catch you off guard or you don't overly emote in a situation. There's a lot of things there that helps with, again, understanding yourself and treating failure like it's supposed to be a lesson, right? And being aware and being present so that you can have a toolbox of responses to those things that come at you in life, and that you can be calm and directive and going positive with what you're trying to accomplish in your life. And so I'm just like, I imagine what this conversation was like. I know we talked about it and we planned for this conversation today, but having you two gentlemen here today, talking about this, I really enjoyed the session, and it's being recorded. So if anybody has a friend or a colleague that didn't make it today, that you want to share this will be up on our website. And again, I want to just thank Frederick and Kenneth for being here this morning and sharing your thoughts and experience. And then our next webinar is on March the 11th. And so we have, two great presenters that are in the recruiting space, and they are going to talk about why do you need experience to get a job after college. And so they're recruiters. They're dealing with one works in a large company, one does a lot of recruiting for a large company, is in the spaces. So we're going to just unpack this whole thing about experience and what's going on in corporate. And then just keep a lookout for our webinars. If you have any ideas for our future topics, just let us know. We're all here about educating aspiring and current college students to get your head wrapped around this whole thing of life and career and preparing yourself, to thrive in your life after college and being well-rounded there. So thank you all very much. My brothers, thank you very much for being here this morning, and we'll sign off. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.